The email arrived at 11:42 p.m. Heather had been sitting on her couch laptop, balanced on her knees, finalizing the deck for tomorrow's pitch. The numbers were perfect. The narrative was tight. Every slide had been fine-tuned for weeks. This pitch wasn't just a shot at $50 million in funding. It was her shot at finally stepping out of the shadows of people who only knew how to take credit. She almost didn't see the email buried between spam and a team-wide thread about snacks in the break room. Subject pitch meeting update. She clicked. Heather, after further discussion with leadership, we've decided to streamline the team for tomorrow's presentation. You will not be required to attend. Thanks for all your hard work preparing the deck. For a moment, she just stared at the screen. No greeting, no explanation, no apology. Her throat went dry. She scrolled down, looking for an attached agenda or updated list of presenters. It wasn't there. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jake, one of the senior VPs. Don't take it personally. They just wanted a smaller group for optics. We've got this. She felt her chest tighten. We've got this. They were walking into the most important pitch of her career. Her pitch, her strategy, her product concept. And somehow she wasn't required. Heather slammed her laptop shut and stood pacing her living room. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't about streamlining. This was a coup. She grabbed her phone and dialed Eric, the CFO. He didn't answer. She tried again. Voicemail. She scrolled through her emails trying to find any sign that this had been discussed before. Nothing. Until she saw it. A forwarded thread from Eric Steen, CFO, to Daniel Reyes, CEO. Subject, tomorrow's pitch. Push Heather out before tomorrow. Her presence complicates things. We can't risk her controlling credit if this deal goes through. Let's keep it tight, me, Jake and Susan. Heather's fingers went numb. Her eyes scanned the words again, hoping she'd misread. She hadn't. They weren't just cutting her out. They were cutting her off. Her mind raced. They wanted to take her product, her deck, her work, and present it like it was theirs. If they pulled this off, the $50 million wouldn't just fund the company's growth. It would cement their power and erase her. Heather dropped onto the couch, staring at the city lights outside her window. This was the moment her father had warned her about. In business, there are two kinds of people. The ones who make the plan and the ones who steal it. She'd laughed then, thinking he was too cynical. She wasn't laughing now. At 1:30 a.m., she opened her laptop again. This time, she wasn't working on the pitch deck. She was combing through files, contracts, emails, searching for anything that tied her directly to the product concept. There had to be something. By 2:15 a.m., she found it. A design document she'd filed months ago under her name in a company drive no one ever checked. She scanned the metadata. Author Heather Lawson. Date created April 17th, 2023. Her hands stopped trembling. A small, cold smile tugged at her lips. They thought they could erase her. Not this time. The office felt colder than usual that Monday morning. Heather walked in with her usual calm expression, heels clicking against the polished floor. But inside her chest, a storm was brewing. As she passed the bullpen, conversation seemed to falter. People looked away too quickly. Others kept their heads down, fingers suddenly very busy on keyboards. When she reached her desk, the first thing she noticed was the absence of post-it notes and memos. Usually her inbox was full by 9:00 a.m. questions about product strategy, last-minute updates to the pitch deck. Today, there was nothing. No meeting invites, no project updates, just silence. She tried to log into the shared drive for her product files. Access denied. Heather's fingers hovered over the keyboard as a cold realization sank in. They'd cut me out completely. Hey, Heather. It was Jenna, one of the junior designers. She approached cautiously like someone tiptoeing through a minefield. Just wanted to say, I'm sorry about the pitch thing. Heather looked up, eyes calm but piercing. Are you? Jenna flushed. I mean, I don't know what's going on, but it's fine, Heather said flatly. Thanks. As Jenna scurried off, Heather opened a blank document on her laptop. At the top, she typed, contingency plan. For the rest of the day, she barely spoke to anyone. She could feel the weight of stares on her back. The whispers. Why is she even here? Didn't they pull her from the pitch? Think she's going to quit? At 5:00 p.m., she left the office, but instead of going home, she walked 3 blocks to a small law firm tucked between a dry cleaner and a coffee shop. The receptionist greeted her politely. "I have an appointment with Ms. Alvarez," Heather said. "Right this way." Camila Alvarez was a sharp-eyed attorney with a reputation for taking on corporate giants. As Heather sat down in her modest office, Camila didn't waste time. "I reviewed the documents you sent over," she began. "That design file you created in April, that's your intellectual property." Heather nodded. "But I developed it under their roof." "Yes, but not under a signed work-for-hire agreement. They never secured ownership." Heather exhaled slowly. "So what does that mean?" Camilla smiled faintly. "It means if they pitch your product concept to investors without your consent, they're in violation of copyright law. And if they secure funding based on it, they're exposed," Heather finished. "Exactly." For the first time in 72 hours, Heather felt the knot in her chest loosen. "Do you want to pursue legal action?" Camilla asked. "Not yet," Heather said. "First, I want leverage." The next morning, Heather arrived early and settled into her desk. She pulled up her email and drafted a message. "To Daniel Reyes, CEO, Eric Steen, CFO, subject unauthorized use of proprietary concept. Dear Daniel and Eric, I am writing to remind you that the product concept at the core of the upcoming pitch was authored solely by me, as documented in file, redacted, dated April 17th, 2023. Absent a formal agreement transferring ownership to the company, any use of this concept, without my consent, constitutes infringement of intellectual property rights under US law. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Best, Heather Lawson." She hit send. By noon, the energy in the office had shifted. The same people who'd avoided her all morning now stole furtive glances her way. Whispers started up again, different this time. At 3:00 p.m., her phone buzzed. "Incoming call, Eric Stein." Heather let it ring twice before answering. "Hello." "Heather, we need to talk about that email you sent this morning. I was very clear in the email. You're misunderstanding the situation." "Am I?" There was a pause. "You're making this harder than it has to be." Heather's voice was calm. "No, Eric, I'm making it harder for you." She hung up. That night, she opened her laptop and added one more line to her contingency plan. Step 3. Let them sweat. The conference room was drenched in sunlight that morning, the glass walls offering a perfect view of the city skyline. Daniel Reyes, CEO of Riveton Technologies, stood at the head of the long mahogany table, exuding confidence in his tailored suit. Next to him sat Eric Stein, the CFO, his fingers tapping impatiently on his tablet. Across from them were the investors. 4 of them, heavy hitters, venture partners who held the keys to a $50 million injection that could skyrocket the company's valuation overnight. This was the moment they'd worked for, or rather the moment that Heather had worked for. But Heather wasn't in that room, at least not physically. As Daniel launched into his rehearsed opening, Heather sat in her apartment laptop, open coffee cooling untouched beside her. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't shake, because she'd already pulled the pin. 2 days earlier, her attorney Camila Alvarez had sent a courtesy email to the investors' legal counsel. "We'd like to make you aware that the product Riveton intends to present is based on a concept authored and copyrighted by our client, Heather Lawson. Absent her written consent or licensing agreement, any commercial use of said concept constitutes infringement of intellectual property rights under US law." Back in the conference room, Daniel's voice echoed confidently. "Our new platform streamlines enterprise resource management with an AI-driven backend offering unparalleled efficiency and scalability." He gestured toward the screen where Heather's meticulously designed slides flicked past. "This is a game changer." But the investors didn't look impressed. They exchanged glances, whispered to each other. Mr. Reyes, one of them, interrupted. Daniel froze mid-sentence. "Yes." The investor's tone was cool. "We received a letter yesterday regarding potential intellectual property conflicts with this product. Can you clarify the company's position?" Eric sat up straighter. "Yes, of course," Daniel said, forcing a smile. "We are confident that all IP belongs to Riveton. Our team developed this platform in-house." "Interesting," the investor said. because the letter suggests otherwise. He slid a printout across the table. At the top was Heather's name. Below it, copyright claim. April 17th, 2023. Daniel felt the sweat prickle at the back of his neck. This must be a misunderstanding, Eric cut in. Heather Lawson was part of the team, but she's not here today, the investor said sharply. Correct, Daniel replied. You decided to cut out the individual who originated the core concept. Daniel's mouth opened, closed. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of the projector. Finally, another investor spoke. We can't move forward until this is resolved. If there's an active claim on the IP, it exposes us to significant legal risk. That won't be necessary, Eric said quickly. We can assure you. Have your lawyers assure us, the investor snapped. Not you. Back in her apartment, Heather's phone buzzed. Incoming call. Daniel Reyes. She let it ring twice before answering. Heather? Daniel. We need to talk. Now. About? You know damn well about what? The investors are pulling back because of that letter your attorney sent. Heather's tone was calm, almost bored. I warned you, Daniel. You're infringing on my work. You're sabotaging the company. No, Heather said coldly. I'm protecting what's mine. There was a pause. Then Daniel's voice softened, oozing fake charm. Look, we can work something out. Come in tomorrow. Let's talk face to face. Heather smiled faintly. You're not in a position to negotiate. Not yet. She hung up. By evening, Riverton's board of directors had been dragged into the crisis. The investors were threatening to walk. The company's leadership was fractured. And Heather, she had all the leverage she needed. At 8:00 p.m., her phone rang again. This time, it was Eric. Heather, please, let's meet. You'll get credit, equity, whatever you want. She sipped her wine before answering. I'll think about it. Click. She opened her laptop and added one more line to her contingency plan. Step 4. Make them crawl. Heather walked into the boardroom like she owned it, because in a way she did. Daniel Reyes and Eric Steen were already there, sitting at the far end of the table. Daniel's jaw was tight, his hands clasped together so hard his knuckles whitened. Eric looked worse. His usually neat hair was mussed, and there was a faint sheen of sweat on his forehead. They didn't look like men in control anymore. They looked like men cornered. Heather Daniel began forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Daniel, she replied coolly, taking the seat across from them. Eric opened his mouth, but she held up her hand. Before either of you speak, let's get one thing straight. You don't call the shots here. Not anymore. Daniel bristled. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? Heather cut in. Because as it stands, you're about to lose the biggest deal this company has ever seen. And if I walk out of here without signing an agreement, I'll make sure no investor in this city will touch Riverton again. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. That made it even more terrifying. Eric cleared his throat nervously. What do you want? Heather leaned back in her chair. Glad you asked. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a neatly typed document. Terms. Equity 10% ownership stake in Riverton Technologies. Title Chief Innovation Officer, reporting directly to the board, not the CEO. Profit share 5% of all revenue generated from the AI platform. Acknowledgement. A public statement crediting Heather Lawson as the creator of the core product concept. Daniel scanned the document, his face reddening with each line. This is outrageous. No, Daniel, Heather said softly. What's outrageous is thinking you could erase me from my own work. Eric glanced between them, sweat trickling down his temple. If we agree to this, will you withdraw your claim? Heather's smile was small and sharp. I'll withdraw my claim. I'll even join you on the next call with the investors and assure them everything's resolved. She paused. But only if you sign today. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. You're blackmailing us. Heather didn't flinch. Call it whatever you want. I call it taking back what's mine. The room went silent. Daniel and Eric exchanged a long look. They were out of moves and they knew it. Finally, Daniel spoke. Fine. An hour later, the agreement was signed. Heather rose from her chair, gathering the folder. Pleasure doing business with you, she said. Her voice cool as steel. Daniel muttered something under his breath, but Eric only nodded meekly. As Heather reached the door, she paused. "Oh, one more thing." They looked up. She smiled cold precise. "Next time you try to erase someone, make sure they don't have the pen." And with that, she walked out. The next morning, Riverton's website featured a press release. Riverton Technologies appoints Heather Lawson as Chief Innovation Officer. A smiling photo of Heather accompanied the announcement, though only she and the board knew how that smile had been earned. Later that week, she stood in the same conference room where Daniel had once pitched her work without her. This time, it was her voice leading the presentation. The investors listened intently. Daniel and Eric sat quietly at the side of the table. They weren't the stars anymore. Heather was. As the meeting wrapped up, Sam, a long-time colleague, caught her eye and mouthed, "You did it." Heather allowed herself the faintest nod. In the elevator down, she pulled out her phone and added one final line to her notes app. Step 5, rewrite the rules. She hit save. They thought they could erase me. Instead, I made them sign their names under mine.